name is Taylor, and this is the second episode of Chasing the Wolves podcast. I forgot to mention in my intro that I am recording this podcast outside, and I have Ezio with me, so you may hear some birds chirping in the background, some lawnmowers, or just Ezio moving around. So if that's going to annoy you, maybe skip this episode. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about how I got into dog sledding, where that started, where my interest started, and where I'm at with that now. So when I got my first Siberian Husky, Zelda, that's when I first started actually getting into dog sledding, but I have been interested in it about my whole life. Growing up in Minnesota, there are a lot of mushing kennels up here, and even though as a kid I had never visited any of them, I saw a few teams out, I think at state parks, which looking back now, I'm not sure why they were at state parks. I'm guessing there was some sort of demo, but I specifically remember one team that I met at Lake Maria State Park. They must have been doing some sort of like meet the dogs type deal. But ever since then, and I was probably, 10 at the time. I was pretty young still. Ever since then, I have been interested in Siberian Huskies and dog sledding as a whole. I did more research throughout high school and college on dog sledding, but I didn't really have a high interest in it until I got my first Siberian Husky. With Zelda, I started doing bike drawing because it's an easy way to run your dog and an easy way to get into the dog pulling world. But I wasn't ever considering dog sledding because with one dog, it's a little hard to get into dog sledding. Especially when you have one dog who's maybe not from the best breeder, maybe does not have the best drive to pull, and I just didn't think that you could even do it with one dog. But I started bike drawing with her regardless. This was something that I started doing. I started biking around with her a little before she was one, but I didn't do any serious bike drawing until she was like 1.5. And even now, we don't do anything super crazy. I think the furthest we've gone on a single trip was 16 miles, 17 miles, and that was with all 3 dogs. So even before I got my second 2 dogs, I had been actively doing bike drawing. I didn't think I was going to buy a sled. Even after I got my second dog and my third dog, I thought that I was just going to end up doing dryland mushing, so with my bike. And then I did get a scooter shortly after adopting Ezio, but I thought that that's as far as I would go, is just doing some dryland mushing with them. I forgot to mention that I didn't think that I would be sledding with my team of 3. However, I did build a kick sled when I had just Zelda, and I did have her pull me and some friends and my brother on the kick sled. I didn't think that it would be a long-term thing, and quite honestly, she couldn't pull very far. She could pull maybe a couple 100 feet, and that was about it. She was also still pretty young at that time, so I wasn't pushing her. And you have to keep in mind that I trained Zelda a lot as a puppy, and in doing so, I crushed a lot of her drive to be excited about pulling, because I had trained her to walk nicely on a leash and have a loose leash. So that is something to keep in mind if you are ever training sled dogs, to not be so hard about loose leash walking. If you want a good sled dog, that's maybe one of your last priorities, and that might be obvious, but if you are going getting a dog that's going to be a recreational sled dog and a pet dog, it's something that you might want to think about and consider how you're going to train that. But if you don't know already, I do actively run my dogs when there's snow now. I got a sled pretty close to Christmas. It wasn't the best sled, but it was a basket sled opposed to my kick sled, so it made sledding a lot easier and a lot more controllable. And it had a brake. Fun fact, my kick sled does not have a brake. So after I got Naya, I started to do a little bit of bike drawing with both her and Zelda. Naya was not a fan of pulling, but a part of that was it was also summer and it was hot. We weren't doing anything crazy, but we were doing short stints, and she just didn't really enjoy it, so I didn't push it. But over the summer, I had posted a couple pictures of me bike drawing with Zelda onto a local Husky Facebook group, and someone reached out and said they have a local group that they run with all the time, and they meet up and do runs, so I started running with them. And that's actually how I ended up meeting Ezio, is through someone through that group. They had been fostering him at the time, and that just happened to work out. And actually, the very first time that I met Ezio, they had just basically thrown him at me and said, "Here, run with him," on one of the runs. And the entire run, Zelda and Ezio just wanted to play. And I was like, well, they may not make the best duo for running, but they sure like each other. So I adopted him shortly after. I am so sorry, this bird is deciding to talk to me. I adopted him, and it was history. After that, I basically had to run him because Ezio is a very high drive dog. One of the things that the rescue said to me was basically, if you don't run him, he's going to be a horrible house pet. And I very much so agree. I think even when you run him, he is not a great house pet, but he is a fun dog to have. So after I started running with this group and I adopted Ezio, fall was coming around, and I was really able to push both Zelda and Ezio's bike drawing skills. Because it was getting cooler, it was easier for them to pull, and we could go faster and longer, which was a lot of fun. And I found out that Naya does enjoy to pull. She just doesn't like doing it in the heat, which is very fair. She is a black dog. Her fur absorbs the heat, and she's also a Siberian Husky. She has a very thick coat. So I ran all three dogs pretty much daily or every other day in the fall. And we were doing pretty good. I was getting really active into the sport. Once snow hit, I did end up buying a full-size sled. I tried running the dogs with the kick sled, but to be completely honest, it doesn't hold up well to dogs that are going fast. I think kick sleds are a great way for people who don't know if they're going to get into the sport with single dogs to start. They're easy to transport, they're very light still, and you can use them without dogs really easily, which I like. But anyway, I got my own sled. It was an affordable dog sled. I think these are okay beginner sleds. I got it secondhand for a good deal, and I ran the dogs hard on this thing as much as I could. And I actually started looking into internships at kennels because I live about 2.5 hours from Duluth, so getting an internship at a dog sledding kennel wouldn't be crazy. I'm not that far from it. A lot of them require you to live on site, but I didn't have an issue doing that as long as my dogs could come with. And so I applied to a few, and I think these positions get filled up pretty quickly. The one that did want me, they ended up just not having the funding for the position, unfortunately. But after I did this, I really went into a downhill spiral of dog sledding. I invested in good gear. From the beginning, my dogs have had good harnesses, but I invested in good fitting harnesses because I was running into the issue of Zelda grew a bit, hers is too small, Naya's didn't fit how it should, and Ezio had been using a second-hand one that, again, just didn't fit well. So I got all the gear. I actually registered to run in some races in February of this year, and they all got canceled. Every single one that I applied to got canceled, which is really unfortunate. I think I could have done a lot of connecting into the dog sledding world, and I could have met a lot of people, but it is what it is. We had a weird year for snow. We got dumped on pretty early. That melted off. We got a little bit around New Year's, and then we got some after all the races in February. So again, you can't really do a whole lot about it, and that's just how dog sledding works, unfortunately. But the nice thing is, regardless of whether there's snow or not, as long as it's cool enough, you can do dry land. So I kept up with the dry land, and even now it is June, and I am still occasionally running the dogs as long as it's cool enough, which has been fun. And by fun, I mean the dogs do not like me, and we can't do much of it just simply because that's just how it is. So going back to that Facebook group that I joined and started running with, I ended up creating my own local group to my specific area. Part of the issue I was having with the group that I was in is a lot of their runs were an hour or more away, which is fine. I don't have an issue driving that far, but when I'm trying to do runs every single night, that's a lot of driving, especially after work. And then I also had issues with other dogs that were reactive towards my dogs, and owners not handling it well. There was a lot of drama, and ultimately I decided to leave that group and just pursue my own group. Since then, I have made a few basic videos on my YouTube channel. You can find them for commands and getting started. I have plans to make more videos in the future about what gear you need to get started, how to teach your dogs commands. I know I already have that, but I want to redo that video. I think that I rushed through it, something that I do with a lot of my things, unfortunately. And just tips and tricks. And I would like to gear my videos towards people who are looking to get into dog-powered sports safely, and how to do it not only recreationally, but if they did want to build a team on their own. I'm hoping that my videos could help with that. I have also created a few different documents. So not only do I have videos, but I have visual documents with pictures and text. So for people who learn better from reading, like I tend to, they can take a look at that. I'm going to give a shout out to my Facebook group if you would like to join and see all the different documents and videos that I've posted up there. It is called St. Croix Valley Dog Powered Sports. It is a private group, but if you search for it on Facebook, you should be able to find it. The reason I keep it private is dog-powered sports in general, to the public eye and for people who aren't actively participating in it, a lot of people don't agree with it. There are issues with PETA. PETA doesn't like a lot of things, unfortunately. But there are also issues just with local humane societies and things of that nature. People who are against working dogs. Now, I don't obviously have any issues with working dogs. I think that letting a dog work and do their ancestors' jobs and letting that drive still take up part of their mind and their body. I think that's important for working dogs. And I know that that's also been bred out of some dogs, and that's okay too. But for my dogs personally, I think that working them has been the most beneficial thing that I have done for them. I want to touch on sled dog kennels and the public not necessarily liking dog sledding really quick. I know that a lot of people don't necessarily agree with working dogs. I can understand people's concerns, but I think that the issue with that and the general public is that they don't see working dogs every single day, and they don't see working dogs who aren't working every single day. I have seen working dogs that have the drive to work, who are not working. And let me tell you, it's really sad. And usually, if there's not an outlet for that drive that they have just building up, they start to have behavioral issues. Or, I mean, it's not really behavioral issues, it's just they have a ton of energy and they're not getting an outlet for it. So you have destructive dogs, and you have bored dogs who are getting into things, and they're eating things, and they're destroying things, and it's just really unfortunate. On the flip side, you have large kennels that are working their dogs and doing great with their dogs. There is a kennel up in northern Canada. I believe it's Alberta. I am not familiar with my Canadian geography, but if you want to look them up, their name is Spirit of the North Kennels, and I just looked it up, and I'll correct myself, they are in British Columbia. But the guy who runs these kennels, Al, he does dog sledding. He has his dog sledding teams, and he does touring with his dogs, which means he gives the public rides. But he also does behavioral therapy for dogs who have been in shelters, who don't get adopted out because they have behavioral issues. He's done a ton of work with dogs, a lot of different kinds of dogs, and he just lost, I believe it was about 40 of his dogs, and it's because the British Columbian SPCA decided that his dogs weren't in perfect, pristine care, when if you saw the facts, they were in amazing care. And not only did he have his sled dogs who were in really good shape, he had all his behavioral dogs too, who I'm not sure if they were affected by this kennel seizing, but they should have been able to see that he's working with a wide variety of dogs, and it's just really unfortunate. PETA and a lot of people in the public, they don't understand sled dogs and how they work, and it's really frustrating. And I hope that my dogs and my future kennel can change the public's mind on working dogs. So to come back to a brighter note, I just upgraded my sled, which is really exciting. My affordable dog sled it's a sled. And people have told me it's not the best sled in the world, and I agree, it's not the best sled in the world. However, I think it's a good starter sled. But my issue that I was running into is it is a little hard to steer. It's a bolted sled, meaning that the pieces are bolted together, and it's fairly heavy. I don't know exactly how heavy, but heavier than one of my dogs, and each of my dogs are about 50 pounds. I'd say it's probably close to 60 or 70 pounds. And my new sled will be a lashed sled. It'll be more flexible, it'll be easier to steer, and it'll be a lot lighter, which is very exciting. It's also custom to my height. If you didn't know, I am 6 feet tall, and so a lot of standard things don't necessarily fit my height. My affordable dog sled, I have to bend way over to steer it, which is fine. It works, but it can be a hassle when I like not necessarily a hassle, but it can be a strain on my back because I'm tall, and that's just seems to be the way how a lot of things go. So because it's summer, I'm not actively doing a ton of joring or scootering with my dogs. I am still doing some on the cool days, but it's very minimal. But this upcoming season, I am hoping to do some dry land races in the fall here, and then in the winter, I don't know if I'll be doing any sled races. I don't think that my dogs are fast enough. I might compete just for fun. I did a race this last winter, a very small race. There were only, I think, like 8 people who competed in the 2 races combined, but I got second place, which was fun, but my dogs were pretty slow. So I think this upcoming season in the fall, I will do dry land races either on my scooter or on my bike with Zelda and Ezio. And then in the winter, I have some camping trips planned. I plan to be going out into the wilderness, basically way northern Minnesota. There are some dog sledding trails up there that I can use, and there's also some ATV trails that dog sledders use. And I will be going up there and doing a few multi-day camps, which is going to be very exciting, and it's going to be a very new experience. I think there's a misconception that dog sledding only has to be for racing, and if you know me, I'm not a very competitive person. I do it because my dogs love it, and I think it's a ton of fun. If you ever get a chance to ride on a sled, absolutely do it. It is exhilarating, especially when your dogs go very fast. If you ever have a chance to drive a sled, again, do it. It is a ton of fun. But I will note that make sure you know how to do it, because it is also very scary your first time. So this winter, I will be going up to northern Minnesota, doing some multi-day camps on the new sled. Very exciting. And we will see what happens. I have a feeling I'll be doing some races in February if we have enough snow next year. But it'll all just kind of depend. I've also applied to a couple internships up in northern Minnesota. There are some kennels up there that look like they'd be super fun to work with. So we'll see what the future holds. I think that as I get into dog sledding more, it's just going to be a black hole, and I'm just going to get sucked in, and I am okay with it. But I think that's all I have for dog sledding, so if you have any questions for me, leave them in the comments below for YouTube and on my website. I don't know if I have a forum up yet or not, but there will be eventually if it's not there yet. Or feel free to email me. My email is listed on all of my platforms, and that's all I have for you. Thank you for listening.